My own son's voice echoed in the courtroom, describing my every lapse of memory as a flaw, proof that I was no longer fit to decide my own destiny. It felt like a punch to the gut, hearing those words. Each one was a knife twisting. I sat there, trying to make sense of it all. How could this be happening? To me? With all those strangers watching, judging, listening, to Michael paint me as someone I wasn't. He stood up tall, my Michael, looking so serious. But when his eyes met mine, just for a second, I saw it, a glint. He tried to hide it, to make it look like pity, like he was doing this for my own good. But it wasn't pity. The air in that room felt heavy, suffocating. The judge, a man with tired eyes and a stern face, seemed to nod along with every word Michael said, as if it were all true, as if I were truly just a broken old woman. The ground beneath me felt like it was crumbling, vanishing. My throat tightened, a huge, painful knot. I wanted to scream, to stand up and shout that it was all a lie, a cruelly calculated performance, a way to erase me, to get me out of the picture. But the words wouldn't come. They were stuck, buried deep, suffocated by the shame and the disbelief. To everyone in that room, I was just a confused old woman, a faded photograph, an empty shell waiting to be discarded. A problem to be solved, neatly put away in some faraway place. They looked at me as if I was already gone, already in a nursing home, forgotten. My son, Michael, did a good job of it. He painted such a vivid picture. An incapable mother, he called me, one who left the gas on, one who forgot her own medication. Small things, human things. Things that could happen to anyone, especially when you're a bit older and your mind isn't as sharp as it once was. But he made them sound like evidence, proof that I was losing it, proof that I needed to be taken care of by him. He just didn't know, he couldn't have known, that the greatest and most important memory of all, a promise I made to my late husband, I kept silently, locked away in the depths of my soul, waiting for the right moment. He thought he knew everything about me, every weakness, every small vulnerability. He thought he had me figured out, but some things, the most important things, you keep close, like a secret treasure. They humiliated me, publicly, in front of strangers and, worst of all, in front of my own son. They turned me into a problem, an obstacle, something standing between them and the money they coveted. It was a cold, hard betrayal, a pain that went deeper than any physical ache. It was a wound in my heart, delivered by the very person I loved the most. I had poured my life into him, my love, my hope, and this was the return. Then came the sound, sharp, decisive, the judge's gavel. It struck down, echoing through the quiet room, sealing my fate, temporary guardianship, given to Michael. Just like that, in a single, deafening sound, my autonomy was stripped away. I felt a chill, a deep, bone-aching coldness. But then something else happened, something surprising, something inside me, a tiny spark, a flame, not of anger, not yet, but of something stronger, a quiet resolve. They might have won this first battle. They might have walked away feeling victorious, thinking they had me cornered. But what they didn't realize, what they couldn't possibly understand, was that the war for my dignity had only just begun. And I wasn't about to give up that easily, not while that quiet flame still flickered inside me. The fight was far from over. I just had to figure out my next move. The fight was far from over. I just had to figure out my next move. But before I could even begin to think about what to do next, my mind drifted back, not to the courtroom, not to the gavel, but to a time when things made sense, when love was simple, when trust was real. My name is Eleanor. I'm 75 years old, and I've spent my entire life with a needle in my hand and a smile on my face. You see, I was a seamstress for over 50 years, right here in our neighborhood. It wasn't just a job, you know. It was my life. I saw girls grow up, become mothers themselves, and then grandmothers. They'd bring me their wedding dresses, their children's christening gowns, their everyday clothes that needed a loving stitch. And while I worked, humming softly, they'd tell me things, their worries, their joys, their little secrets, things they wouldn't tell anyone else. Those secrets, I kept them safe, between one stitch and another, just for them. My husband, Julian, he was a bricklayer, a strong, not just a house, you understand. Our home. Every brick in these walls has a story. Every corner bears the mark of our effort, of our love. We laid them one by one, dreaming of the life we'd have here, the family we'd raise, the laughter that would fill these rooms. Julian was always a cautious man. He thought ahead, always had a plan, a backup plan. Before he passed, before I lost him, he called me into the kitchen. It was late afternoon. The light was soft through the window. He held my hands, already wrinkled, in his big, rough ones. He looked at me, his eyes so serious. "Eleanor," he said, his voice low, "our sweat is in these walls. This place is yours. It's your fortress." He paused, squeezing my hands gently. "Promise me you'll protect it, from everything and everyone." Then he handed me a sealed envelope. It felt thick, important. He told me to keep it with Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson was our lawyer, a lifelong friend of Julian's, a good, honest man. I never really needed to open that envelope, not after Julian was gone. I trusted his foresight, and I trusted my son's love above all else. After I became a widow, my life just shifted. It became Michael, my only son, and his wife, Caroline. They were my world. I cooked their favorite dishes, even when they weren't really hungry. I helped them with their bills when money was tight, quietly slipping them a little something from my savings. And I opened my home to them, always, as if they were still children, even though they were grown. With families of their own, I spared no effort. I truly believed that's what family was, caring for each other, helping each other, expecting nothing in return. That was just how I was raised, how Julian and I lived. Little did I know, as I poured my heart and my time and my meager savings into them, that for Michael and Caroline, I had already become something else entirely, something less, something colder. Just the owner of the house they so coveted. It started slowly, so subtly that at first I didn't even realize what was happening. It was like a chill wind blowing through a half-open window. You feel it, but you can't quite place where it's coming from. Not at first. My Sunday visits, they used to be the highlight of my week. Michael, my son, and Caroline, my daughter-in-law, they'd come over. We'd have coffee, talk about their week. My week, simple things, but then they started getting shorter. "Oh, we have to run, Mom," Michael would say, checking his watch. Or Caroline would chime in. "So much to do before Monday." It wasn't rude, not exactly, but it wasn't the same. The warmth, the lingering, it just faded, like a summer afternoon, turning into twilight too fast. Then the phone calls. They used to be so nice. We'd talk for ages. Now they were rushed. Always an excuse. Just calling to say hi. "Mom, we're really busy with work." Or, "Can't talk long, Eleanor. Meeting in 5 minutes." The words were polite, but the tone, it was brisk, distant, like they were ticking a box. And I'd hang up, holding the receiver, a little sigh escaping me, a small ache in my chest. What was it? I didn't know how to name it. Caroline, my daughter-in-law, she started making these little comments, casually, over a cup of tea, or when she was just glancing around my living room. "This house is really big for you, isn't it, Eleanor?" she'd say. "Must be so much upkeep." Or, "It must be terribly expensive to run a place like this, all by yourself." Her voice was soft, almost caring, but it felt like a barb, a tiny pinprick. Every time she said it, I felt a chill, not from the window this time, but from inside me. A distancing, a quiet push. It hurt more than any direct insult could have, because it was coming from family, from people I loved. Michael, my son, he started doing it too, not inviting me to family lunches anymore. "Oh, Mom, it would be too tiring for you to come all the way over," he'd say. Or, "We're just having something quick, nothing fancy." As if my company wasn't wanted. As if I was a burden, not his mother. And they started making small decisions. Things about their lives, about family gatherings, about holidays, without even a word to me. As if my opinion no longer mattered. As if I was already gone. Already out of the picture. And I just sat there, listening, feeling smaller and smaller. Then came the moment that truly froze my heart. I was in the kitchen making some tea. They were in the living room, talking on the phone. Caroline. I heard her voice, clear as day. "The old woman," she said, "is getting more and more forgetful." My hand stopped mid-air. The teacup clattered slightly against the saucer. "She's really losing it," she continued. My blood ran cold. My heart didn't just freeze, it felt like it shattered into a million tiny pieces. Forgetful, was I? Sometimes, yes, a little. Who isn't at my age? I'd misplace my reading glasses, or forget if I'd taken my afternoon pill. Small things, human things. But I wasn't losing it. I wasn't forgetful in the way she meant. I was being pushed aside, slowly, deliberately. pushed out of my own life, out of their lives. I tried to justify it. Oh, how I tried. I'd tell myself it was just modern life. Everyone was so busy now, always rushing. They had their own lives, their own responsibilities. Maybe I was just being sensitive, too old-fashioned, too demanding. But deep down, I knew. I felt it, abandonment. It was settling in, like a persistent weed in my beautiful garden, quietly choking everything. The pain. It was silent, a sadness I didn't know how to name. It came precisely from the people to whom I had dedicated my entire existence. My son, my daughter-in-law, the ones I had loved, nurtured, supported. And now they were pushing me away, slowly, surely. And I was just left there, watching it happen, feeling helpless. The knot in my throat was back. Only this time, there was no courtroom. Just me, in my own home, alone with a quiet, creeping sorrow. The betrayal, when it finally landed, didn't come with a shouting match or a confrontation. It came quietly, insidiously, on a Tuesday. A rainy Tuesday, I remember. The kind of day where the sky matches your mood, even if you don't know it yet. I was in the kitchen, wiping down the counter, when there was a knock on the door. Not the familiar knock of a neighbor or the quick rap of a delivery person. This was firm, official. I opened the door to a man in a crisp uniform, a court officer. My heart gave a little thump. What could it be? Had I forgotten to pay some old bill? He didn't smile, just held out a paper, a thick envelope. My name was on it. Eleanor Vance. My hands trembled slightly as I took it. He just nodded and turned away. No explanation, just the rain and the silence. I closed the door, the paper feeling heavy in my hand. I opened the envelope, my fingers fumbling with the seal. And then I saw it. The words jumped out at me. Petition for guardianship, filed by Michael, my son. The world tilted. The air left my lungs. It was like someone had punched me right in the stomach. Hard. He claimed I no longer had the mental capacity to manage my own affairs, my assets, especially the house. My home. He wanted to be my guardian, legally responsible for me, for everything that was mine. It wasn't just a claim. It was an accusation, a public declaration that I was no longer fit, as if it would show them I was still Eleanor, still capable. But the humiliation, it was complete. Sitting there, in that cold courtroom, before a judge I didn't know, hearing my own son speak, it was agony. He stood up, looking so formal, so grown up. He listed my forgetfulness as irrefutable proof. His voice was calm, almost detached. He spoke of a pot I left on the stove for too long once when I was distracted by a phone call. Of a bill I paid twice because I was rushing and didn't check the ledger. Small things, things that happen to anyone. But in his mouth, in that sterile room, they became evidence, weapons, each word a sharp edge, cutting away at my autonomy, at my dignity. He didn't yell. He didn't make a scene. He just laid it all out, calmly, factually, as if he were discussing the weather. And every detail, every little oversight was twisted, magnified, used to strip me of everything. My mind kept trying to find his eyes, to search for a flicker of remorse, a hint of the son I had raised. But he couldn't meet my gaze. He looked past me, around me, anywhere but at me. It was like I wasn't even there, just an obstacle, a formality. The judge, a serious man with tired lines around his eyes, listened patiently. He didn't interrupt. He just took it all in. All of Michael's carefully constructed narrative. And then he spoke. His voice was low, authoritative. He granted temporary guardianship to Michael, just like that. In that moment, I was no longer Eleanor, the seamstress, the mother, Julian's widow. I was a case, a number, an incapable person in the eyes of the law. And what was worse, in the eyes of my son, the very person who should have protected me. I stood up slowly, feeling unsteady. My legs felt like jelly. I left the courthouse. Steps seemed impossibly steep. The world outside looked the same, but it wasn't. For me, everything had changed. It felt like my soul had been ripped out of me, leaving only an empty shell behind, a hollow space where my self-worth used to be. The rain had stopped, but a cold, desolate wind swirled around me. I walked, one foot in front of the other, feeling nothing but a profound, aching emptiness. I was adrift, lost, and entirely alone. The silence around me was deafening. The silence within me even more so. I walked, one foot in front of the other, feeling nothing but a profound, aching emptiness. I was adrift, lost, and entirely alone. The silence around me was deafening. The silence within me even more so. But as those burning tears of humiliation slowly dried on my face, something happened. A memory flickered. Julian's words, his voice so clear in my mind, telling me to protect this house, my fortress. And then the sealed envelope, the one he'd told me to keep with Mr. Davidson. Mr. Davidson, our family lawyer, a kind and honest man who had been Julian's friend for decades. It was like a switch flipped. The profound pain didn't turn into hatred, not exactly. It was too raw for that. But it solidified, hardened into something else. A strategic calm, a cold, quiet resolve I didn't even know I still possessed. If they wanted to see me as a fragile, confused old lady, an empty shell, well, that was exactly the role I would play. They had set the stage. I would simply perform. When I finally stumbled through my front door, the silence of my own home felt heavier than the courtroom. But something had shifted inside me. The despair, that cold emptiness, it was still there, but mixed with a new kind of fire, a quiet, steady heat. If they wanted a defeated old woman, that's exactly what I would give them. I took a deep breath. It was time to play a part. Michael and Carolyn arrived later that day. They looked almost triumphant. Pity was plastered on their faces, but beneath it, I could see the smug satisfaction. They had won. Michael had a stack of papers, legal documents, I assumed. He started explaining them, his voice patient, almost condescending. Words like assets and management and your best interest. I didn't question a single thing. I just nodded, slowly. My eyes, I made sure they looked a little unfocused, a little distant, like I was barely grasping what he was saying. I signed where he pointed. My hand trembled, but not from fear, from a simmering determination. Caroline tried to explain things about my finances, about future arrangements. Her explanations were complicated, full of numbers and legal jargon. I just looked at her, my gaze vacant, pretended not to understand, gave a small, confused smile. "Oh dear," I'd murmur. "That sounds awfully complicated. You'll take care of it, won't you?" I saw the flicker in her eyes, the relief, the certainty that she had me completely fooled. They believed they had total control. They believed I was already gone, already out of the game. They talked openly in front of me about the future, about what was best for me. It was always for me, of course, for my safety, for my comfort. I just nodded, smiled that same vacant smile, as if I were in another world, far away, too lost to understand their true intentions. But I was watching. Oh, I was watching them. I watched them in silence. My eyes, though they seemed empty, were taking in everything, studying every movement, every subtle glance. I saw their eyes linger on the old wooden floors, the high ceilings, the antique furniture Julian and I had collected over the years. Their glances were covetous, not loving, not nostalgic. They didn't see the memories in these walls. They didn't see my life. They saw an investment, a property, something to be stripped down and sold off. They didn't see a mother. They didn't see Eleanor, the seamstress who had given them everything. They saw an impediment, a hurdle, something standing between them and what they wanted. I understood that, for them, I no longer existed as a person with thoughts, feelings, or a will of my own. I was just the owner of the house they so desperately coveted, an obstacle soon to be removed. And it was at that very moment, as they bustled around my living room, already mentally rearranging it, already talking about paint colors and renovations, that I knew the time was right. I excused myself, slowly, as if a little unsteady on my feet. I went to the old rotary phone in the hallway. I looked over my shoulder. They were still talking, oblivious. Good. I dialed Mr. Davidson's number. My fingers, steady now, tapping out the familiar digits. When he answered, his voice kind and familiar, I kept mine soft, a little weak, but firm. Just like I used to speak to Julian when I had a secret. "Mr. Davidson," I whispered into the receiver. "It's Eleanor. I need you to wait for my signal." He didn't ask questions. He was a good man. He just said, "I understand, Eleanor. I'll be ready." I hung up the phone. A quiet breath escaped me. They thought they had all the cards, but they were wrong. The last card was mine, and I would play it at the right time. They would never see it coming. The last card was mine, and I would play it at the right time they would never see it coming. And they didn't waste any time. With that temporary guardianship, Michael and Caroline started moving fast, like they had a deadline. The first thing they did, less than a week later, was change the lock on my front door. My front door. The one Julian and I had picked out, the one I had opened to friends and family for 50 years. "For your safety, Mom," Michael said, his voice flat. "Just to make sure no one unauthorized comes in." Caroline nodded along, her expression carefully neutral, as if I was the one who couldn't be trusted. Suddenly, I needed to ask permission to enter my own home, to leave it. My house, my fortress, Julian called it. Now it felt less like a fortress and more like a cage. My solitude, which I had always cherished, became a captivity, disguised as care. Every time I reached for my old key, and it didn't fit, a fresh wave of humiliation washed over me. I felt like a child, or worse, a prisoner, in my own home. Soon after, the brochures started arriving. Thick, glossy papers for nursing homes. Caroline would leave them on the kitchen table, right next to my favorite teacup, with little yellow sticky notes attached. "Excellent medical care." One note read. "Beautiful grounds," said another. She spoke about them as if she was talking about a holiday resort. Her voice light, too light, as if this was a kindness, a gift. They started speaking openly right in front of me, as if I wasn't even there, as if I were just a piece of furniture. "We'll need to sell the house." Of course, Caroline would say to Michael, to pay for a more suitable place for her. A more suitable place for me, like I was an object, to be relocated, to be disposed of. The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. Every day they took a piece of my life, a piece of my history. With every brochure, every hushed conversation, every casual mention of selling the house, they chipped away at what was left of me, of my past, of Julian's legacy. I sat there, sipping my tea, my eyes fixed on some distant point. I pretended not to understand. I nodded weakly when they looked at me, a blank smile on my face. Inside, though, I was screaming, but no sound came out. Only a cold, quiet anger that simmered deep in my belly. I just watched. I listened. I learned. My neighbor, Sarah, was the only one. She's a kind young woman, always bright and full of life. She lives next door, and sometimes she'd bring me a sweet pastry from the bakery. She'd come over, see Michael and Caroline, see me sitting there, quiet, the part they thought was gone. She saw them. She saw my son and daughter-in-law moving around my living room, taking measurements of the windows, discussing paint colors, already planning the house's decoration without me, without even a thought for me. It was like I was already gone, a ghost in my own home. Michael held up a swatch of fabric, a dark, modern blue. "This will look great here," he said to Caroline, ignoring me completely. Caroline scribbled in a notebook. They were already moving my things, mentally, physically, erasing me. The pain, it reached its peak then, not the sharp, sudden pain of betrayal, but a dull, aching throb, a deep, pervasive sorrow. I was a ghost in my own home, walking through rooms filled with memories, now just echoing hollowly, waiting for the final blow, waiting for them to push me out completely. I just sat there, watching them plan my future without me in it. I could feel the cold certainty of their victory. They thought they had won completely. They had no idea. Not yet. I just sat there, watching them plan my future without me in it. I could feel the cold certainty of their victory. They thought they had won completely. They had no idea. Not yet. The day of the final hearing dawned, gray and overcast, like so many days recently. But something felt different inside me. A quiet steel. I dressed carefully, the same sensible dress I'd worn to the first hearing. This time, though, it felt like armor. My hands were steady as I pinned my hair back. I looked in the mirror. An old woman, yes, but not a defeated one. Not anymore. The room was the same as before, cold and sterile. But this time, it felt different to me. Michael and Caroline were already there, sitting across from me, a little too close, a little too comfortable. They exchanged discreet smiles, little nods. They were certain, absolutely certain, that the judge would make the guardianship permanent, that the house would finally be theirs. Their eyes kept flicking to me, not with concern, but with a kind of smug satisfaction, as if they were watching the final act of a play they had already written. I kept my face carefully blank, the frail, confused old woman. I let my gaze wander, a little unfocused. I even gave a small, almost imperceptible sigh, as if I were tired. Let them believe it. Let them taste their victory. The judge, the same tired man, sat down. He looked at the papers in front of him. Michael cleared his throat, ready to speak, ready to seal my fate. The judge picked up his gavel. The air grew thick with expectation. This was it, the moment they had worked so hard for. But just as his hand lifted, just as he was about to give his verdict, a voice cut through the silence. Calm, firm. "Your Honor," Mr. Davidson said. "My lawyer, my Julian's old friend." He stood up slowly, deliberately. "If I may, I have a new document to present to the court." Michael's head snapped up. Caroline's eyes narrowed, a flicker of annoyance, then confusion. They exchanged a look. What was this, Mr. Davidson walked forward, unhurried, and handed a sheaf of papers to the judge. The judge took them, a slight frown on his face. He began to read. My heart was pounding now, a quiet drumbeat in my chest. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for, the moment Julian's caution and my own quiet strength would finally reveal itself. Mr. Davidson cleared his throat. "This document, Your Honor, is Eleanor Vance's new will, signed and notarized just last week." A ripple went through the room. Michael actually gasped, a small, choked sound. Caroline's mouth fell open just a little. Their smug smiles vanished, replaced by bewilderment. The judge continued to read, slowly. his eyes moving back and forth across the pages. My mind replayed the words I had dictated to Mr. Davidson, words I had chosen with care, with dignity. In that document, drafted with a clarity and firmness that surprised even myself, I declared myself perfectly lucid, sound of mind, fully capable of making my own decisions. I wasn't confused. I wasn't losing it. I was in control. And then came the real blow, the final, quiet strike. I had disinherited my son, Michael, for emotional and material abandonment. Mr. Davidson had explained it to me. The law guaranteed me that provision, the right to make such a choice when I had been neglected by my own child. It wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about drawing a line. Michael's face, when he finally looked at me, was a mask of disbelief. He wanted to speak, but no words came out. Caroline looked pale, her eyes darting between me and the judge. Then Mr. Davidson presented another document, the sealed envelope, the one Julian had given me all those years ago, the one I had kept safe with our lawyer friend. My hands, which had felt empty for so long, felt full again, brimming with purpose. Inside, as the judge opened it, was the deed to the house, entirely in my name, and a clause, written by Julian himself, in his own hand, stating that I had full, unquestionable powers to decide the fate of the property. My house, my fortress, it was mine, and only mine. Julian's foresight, his lasting gift. The will continued, its words echoing in the sudden, absolute silence of the room. I left the house and all my assets to Sarah, my kind neighbor, the young woman who had seen me, truly seen me, when my own son could not. But there was one single unbreakable condition. She had to care for me, in this very house, until my last day. If she failed, if she ever abandoned me, everything would be donated to a charity. Every penny, every brick. No loophole, no escape clause. The silence was deafening. It pressed in on us, heavy and still. Michael and Caroline's faces, they contorted, from shock to disbelief, then to a dawning, terrible realization. The greedy gleam in Michael's eyes was gone, replaced by a stunned, hollow emptiness. Caroline looked like she might faint. The color drained from her face. The judge, for the first time, looked directly at me, and in his eyes I saw it. Not pity, not judgment, but respect. He saw the strong woman behind the fragile facade, the seamstress, the builder of a life, the protector of a home. He read the documents one last time, slowly nodded. Guardianship revoked immediately, he stated. His voice was firm, final, and with those words, the cage doors of my captivity, disguised as care, swung wide open. I was free. I was Eleanor again. And the fight, though not entirely over, had just turned a corner. A beautiful, unexpected corner. Guardianship revoked immediately, he stated. His voice was firm, final, and with those words, the cage doors of my captivity, disguised as care, swung wide open. I was free. I was Eleanor again, and the fight, though not entirely over, had just turned a corner. A beautiful, unexpected corner. I didn't return home with a feeling of vengeance, not truly. It was more a profound, quiet peace I hadn't felt in such a long time. It was the kind of peace that settles deep in your bones after a storm passes. Michael and Caroline, they just vanished from my life. Without a word, without an apology, they were consumed by their own greed, I suppose. I never heard from them again, and that was all right. There was nothing left to say, nothing left to take. Sarah, my kind neighbor, with her simple ways and her good heart, she moved into the guest room, just as the will stated. It was a natural fit. Our routine is peaceful now, made of quiet mornings, breakfasts on the porch when the weather is good, simple conversations about the garden flowers, the little birds that visit our feeder. There's no rush, no tension, just the gentle rhythm of two lives sharing a space, sharing respect. The house, oh, the house. It's different now. It once felt like a prison, a place where I was just waiting for the end to come, waiting to be pushed out completely. Now it breathes again. It breathes relief and respect. Every corner feels lighter. Every room holds a quiet happiness. The sound of my old sewing machine once again echoes through the hallway, but not out of necessity this time. It's for pleasure. I make little things for Sarah, for her nieces, or I just mend things slowly, enjoying the feel of a fabric, the hum of the machine. It's a comfort. I teach Sarah how to do small repairs around the house. Little things Julian taught me. How to patch a wall, how to fix a squeaky hinge. And she, in turn, teaches me. She showed me how to use that little cell phone, how to see photos of her nieces and nephews. Little faces, smiling, right there in my hand. It's a small miracle. We laugh a lot. Soft, easy laughter. There's no luxury here. No big parties. Just the beauty of a dignified daily life. Simple. Honest. I recovered the keys to my house, but more importantly, I recovered the reins of my life. I hold them now, gently but firmly. My mind feels clear, my soul clean. I look at my geraniums, blooming bright red on the porch, defiant against the shifting seasons. And I understand the true inheritance Julian and I built together. It wasn't just these bricks. It was the strength within them, the dignity they represented, and that, I know, no one would ever be able to take from me again. And that, I know, no one would ever be able to take from me again. This feeling, this quiet certainty, it wasn't something I expected to find again. Not after everything. After all the pain, the betrayal, the feeling of being stripped bare. It made me think, you know, really think about what happened to me, and maybe what happens to so many others. Sometimes life just places us in these strange situations, especially as we get older. You wake up one day and it feels like the world has decided you're no longer quite real. that your voice doesn't carry the same weight it used to. You become invisible, a shadow in your own home, in your own family. I had given so much, my whole life, really. As a seamstress, I literally stitched pieces of people's lives together. As a mother, I poured every ounce of my being into Michael. I cared, I loved, without measure, without ever asking for anything in return. That's just how I understood family, how I understood life. And then, one day, you realize that to some, to the very ones you poured your heart into, you're just a memory, a faded photograph they look at with a sigh. Or worse, a burden, something to manage, an obstacle in their path to whatever they covet. They don't see the years of effort, the quiet sacrifices, the wisdom gained from a lifetime of living. They just see the lines on your face, the slight tremor in your hand, the occasional moment of forgetfulness that happens to anyone. And they use it, they twist it, to erase you, to decide for you, as if your will, your deepest desires, your very dignity, no longer matter. I learned that lesson the hard way. That dignity, it's not something someone gives you. It's something you hold on to, fiercely, even when they try to tear it from you. It's knowing your worth, even when the world tries to tell you you have none. It's remembering who you are, even when others try to redefine you. For me, it was Julian's words, his careful planning, that gave me the chance to stand firm, to show them that Eleanor was still here, still deciding, still fighting for her own life, not just for a house, but for the fundamental right to be myself, to be recognized as a person with thoughts, feelings, and a clear mind. This journey, my story, it got me thinking about how we treat each other, about how we treat our elders, those who have lived, who have built, who have loved, the ones who laid the foundations for so much of what we have. Sometimes it feels like we, as older people, are just expected to fade away gracefully, to become quiet, to accept whatever decisions are made for us, even if those decisions strip away our independence, our sense of self. It's a quiet cruelty, often done with a smile and the words, "for your own good." But it's still taking away someone's very right to exist as themselves. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever been in a situation where you were treated as if your will didn't matter? By the very people who should protect you, who should listen to you the most? Those who should be your biggest supporters, your closest confidants. It's a painful realization, isn't it? To feel like your voice has been silenced, your choices dismissed, your very presence becoming an inconvenience. It's a feeling that cuts deep because it comes from those you love, those you trusted. My geraniums still bloom on the porch, vibrant and strong, defiant. They remind me that even after the harshest winter, life finds a way to blossom again. But the scars, the quiet lessons from that time, they remain. They remind me to cherish this regained peace, this freedom, and to never take for granted the simple, profound right to be seen, to be heard, to be valued just as I am. Because that, for anyone, is the truest inheritance of all. It's a right we all deserve at every age, in every stage of O. And they always will. And this realization, it's not just a thought that passes. It lives in me now. It sits with me in the quiet mornings when Sarah and I sip our tea on the porch, watching the sun warm the garden. It's in the rhythm of my old sewing machine, humming its familiar tune, no longer a necessity, but a pure, simple pleasure. The fabric glides under my fingers, a tangible connection to all the years I spent making beautiful things, mending broken ones. And now I'm mending my own life, stitch by careful stitch, not erasing the past, but making it part of a new, stronger pattern. That heavy cloak of invisibility, the one that tried to smother me, it's gone, lifted, replaced by a lightness, a sense of self that feels more solid than ever before. I am not just Eleanor, the old woman. I am Eleanor, the seamstress, the mother, Julian's wife, yes, but also Eleanor the fighter, the one who held on to her dignity when everything tried to pull it away. This house, when I walk through the rooms now, I don't see the shadows of neglect or the ghosts of betrayal. I see Julian's hands, strong and loving, building each brick. I see my own hands, guiding the needle, creating beauty. I see Sarah's kind smile, the genuine warmth in her eyes. It's a living home again, a place filled with respect, with quiet laughter, with shared moments. Simple things, really. But after what I went through, these simple things are everything. They are priceless. I help Sarah sometimes with her little chores, and she helps me with mine. She teaches me how to use that complicated cell phone, how to send a text, how to look at pictures of her family. It's a whole new world opening up in my hand. And I, in turn, teach her the old ways, how to preserve jams, how to make Julian's favorite bread. We share stories, her young stories, my old ones. And in that exchange, I feel a connection, a continuity. My voice, my experiences, they are heard, they are valued. And that, after feeling so dismissed, is truly a balm for the soul. It makes me think about all of us, doesn't it? About how we all at some point might feel overlooked, or silenced, or even targeted by those who should love us most. It's a frightening thought to feel your very essence challenged, your right to choose diminished. And it's not just about age, you see. It's about being human, about the fundamental need to be seen, to be heard, to be respected for who you are and for the wisdom you carry, for the life you've lived. My story, it's just one story, but it opened my eyes. It taught me that resilience isn't about being loud or angry, but about being quiet and steady, about knowing your worth and holding on to it with both hands. It's about realizing that even when your world feels like it's crumbling, there's a strength inside you, waiting to be rediscovered. A quiet fire that no one, no matter how much they try, can ever truly extinguish. And knowing this, feeling this deep in my heart, I want to share it. I want others to know that they are not alone, that their stories matter, that their voices deserve to be heard. Because listening to real stories, to the honest experiences of others, it helps us all feel a little less alone, doesn't it? It connects us. It reminds us of our shared humanity. So, if you want to keep receiving real stories like this, if you want to be part of this quiet connection, I just want to tell you something important, something I've learned recently from Sarah. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. It's a strange thing, but it happens. So, if these stories resonate with you, if they touch your heart as much as they do mine, when I hear or tell them, please just